Hello, fellow striver. So you have heard from every single guru out there that real estate is dead, that your investments need to focus on the new and more exciting investments. Well, today we're going to learn a few different gems that are hidden from plain sight or popular conversation that really give real estate the edge. Now, I'm not saying by any means that real estate is the only thing that you should be doing or even the best thing that you should be doing. However, home ownership, and I emphasize here on the home ownership, still has some attractive ways to get you to financial independence and building wealth over the long term. So stick with me, like, share, and subscribe, and let's get into it. So, is it worth it? Recently, we have seen interest rates get raised significantly in the past several quarters to a point where they have doubled. This morning, I checked the interest rates on a 5-year mortgage are about 5.25%. As you all know, 9 months ago, maybe a year ago, it was about 2.4. So that's about twice as much. So this brings up the question, does that mean the end of cheap money, or cheaper money means the end of real estate as an investment? To be frank with you, the increase in real interest rates has resulted in a more complicated relationship between affordability of a house and the viability of an investment in real estate. However, this does not mean by any stretch of imagination that real estate is dead. Today, I want to discuss 6 things that are usually hidden from plain view to make sure that you understand the benefits that buying a home affords you. Now, this does not mean that we will be discussing real estate investment, so there will be no discussion about cap rates or any other sophisticated rate of return conversation. That will be on another time. Today, we'll just discuss these very key and very important things that you should know when you're considering whether to buy a home. For you, my fellow striver, I always recommend that if you're buying a home, at least planning on living in the home for 3 years, especially if you're using insurance to cover for a high ratio mortgage. A high ratio mortgage is a mortgage where you put down less than 20%. However, I digress. Let's focus on the 6 benefits. The number one benefit that is rarely talked about or underemphasized, in my opinion, is the tax advantage that comes with owning a home. Now, I need to be very careful here that everything I say here is not tax advice. So make sure that if you are going to consider putting some of these strategies in action, you consult your accountant or you look further into this. But tax advantages that come with a home are very significant and should always be considered when you're making the decision whether to get the home or to get other investments. One of the big examples that I can give for this is capital gains exemption. When you're setting your primary residence, you will be exempt from some capital gains. I'm not saying 100%. These things, when it's time to sell, you add them to the amount of money that you put out in the first place. So for example, if you bought a house for $240,000 and you bought a roof for $5,000 and you bought an air conditioning for another $5,000, and now you are about to sell the house for $300,000, you have in essence a profit of $300,000 minus $240,000 minus $5,000 and minus $5,000, which leaves you with a capital gain of $50,000 and not $60,000. Okay, the second part is capital gains are taxed with advantage. So this $50,000 that you made is going to be taxed differently from how much you're taxed on your salary or any other investment income. This net tax advantage accrues to how much you eventually take home. So I hope you can understand that it is very important when understanding why buy a home that these tax advantages are going to be working in your favor as a striver. Now, the second underemphasized part of real estate and owning a home is the inflation capture feature of real estate. So let's talk about it. Inflation has just come out to be the hottest subject of 2022. Inflation single-handedly has been the reason why the central bank of both the United States and the Central Bank of Canada have been increasing rates at a breathtaking pace to try and get inflation down. And the forecast is that we will keep experiencing this elevated level of inflation until we get to a point where they are comfortable. Now, I am not one to say when this is. My crystal ball does not work. So if you have yours, write down in the comments what you know about what's going to happen, and also send me the Powerball numbers, because I think it's 942 million now, and I could use every single penny of that. I digress. Now, when there are high inflation times, the biggest thing that you can hold are real assets. Now, real assets accrue all the benefits of inflation better than even the stock market and other things that we have known to capture inflation. And this will work in your favor because of two things. First of all, when inflation is high, the cost of things keep going up. As the cost of things go up, the money that is used to buy those things has a naturally sinking value, which means the money costs less or can afford less. Whichever way you see it, it buys less goods. However, historically, we have seen that whenever we have accelerating inflation, like between 1973 and 2019, real estate performs well and commodities performs well, and they outperform even the US equities and investment grade bonds. So allocation in real estate becomes a real natural hedge against inflation. And these are not just my words for it. As you can see, this is a study that was conducted that concluded the same thing. So if you own a home, the mortgage that you hold will be getting cheaper because the money is losing value. However, the price of the house will be increasing because inflation is bringing everything up. So in net, you're benefiting two ways, because a home value will keep going north and the debt value will keep going down. If you have a question on that, write me at the bottom and I'll be glad to answer that. The third and most important thing that gets underemphasized when we're talking about home purchase is the access to leverage. So let's play a game. I have one daughter and I want to buy a house for $20. Is that possible? Yes, that is possible. So in most cases, whenever you go to participate in the market, you are limited to the amount of money that is in your pocket. If you have $5, you can only buy something for $5. And fortunately for you, most of the people that end up doing well, they are very careful using any kind of leverage. This includes buy now, pay later. That's also a form of leverage. But with a home specifically, the banks are allowed to give you the largest leverage you can find in the market. And this means for something that costs $200,000, as a first-time home buyer, you can put 5% down and be able to make that purchase. This is uniquely a feature that comes in with the real estate market. The 5% is uniquely available to mostly first-time home buyers and not institutional grade. However, this access to leverage has actually drawn institutions. As you can see, institutions have been able to compensate for their return whenever the market is down by engaging in higher leverage assets like real estate, where they can only put down a little bit of money and stand to make a lot more money. And this applies to you as well. So this is a benefit that is available to you should you choose to use a home as part of your investment strategy. So it is very, very important that you understand that this idea of getting leverage up to 20x leverage is unheard of in the market. Even businesses cannot get 20x leverage at any point. Now, I'm not saying that leverage has no downsides. Leverage absolutely does have downsides. But the upside, inflationary environment, is that it captures inflation on your behalf using leverage that is up to 10x what you had in your pocket. This is a big advantage that should be emphasized every time we're having this conversation about home ownership. The fourth and very important fact that is underemphasized and not completely given its light is the fact that home ownership reduces true housing costs. So this is where the rent versus buy conversation comes in. And before all of you Twitter mathematicians come at me, I understand there's some cases where renting is advantageous. However, the increase in rents in the models that I've seen do not account for in the highest inflationary periods. We saw rent increases annually average about 8%. In an 8% inflationary period, having a rent versus buy calculator becomes moot, especially if we are going to see these rates stabilize at 5%. Now, I'm not saying they're going to stabilize at 5%, but however much higher they go, this interest cost will be passed down to the renters. Now, when we're comparing whether renting or having a home, we need to talk about several things. So we'll just peel the layers to understand what we are comparing. For a renter, there are two costs you really need to worry about. You need to worry about the rent, and if you're paying utilities separate, and taxes and insurance. So renter's insurance. If you're paying those separate, it's an easier comparison to make. Most homeowners do not have the chance to wonder where or not who is paying for which part of the expenses. So as we compare, for home ownership, because you're a homeowner doesn't mean you do not pay rent. It's just different. The payment that you make for principal and interest, about 50% of that goes to the principal and 50% of that goes to interest. And yes, again, Twitter mathematicians, relax. I know at the beginning of the mortgage, you're paying about 70% to interest and 30% to principal. Over the course of 25 years, if you pay out the mortgage, it will even out to about 47% interest and 53% mortgage. Okay, are we good? Okay, let's agree on that. So now let's take a look at somebody who has a mortgage of, let's say, 400,000. With a mortgage of 400,000, you can see that their payments will be about 2,221 monthly. And this is on a 5% interest, 5% down payment, and 25 years amortization. And about half of that is going to be allocated towards the mortgage. And if we take a median between 47% at the end of the mortgage payment and 70 at the beginning, let's do 58. So if we do 58%, 58% of that is interest. So on that kind of number, where it's at 2,200, about 1,300 of that is rent, which is the interest payment, because you're paying that and it's gone. You don't recover it anywhere. But in addition to that, you're also paying taxes that you will not recover anywhere. You're also paying utilities that you will not recover anywhere. However, the renter is also paying utilities. You're also paying home insurance. That is comparable to renter's insurance. However, some renters do not need insurance. So if you add up the interest that you're paying, you add up the utilities, you add up the property taxes, you are coming awfully close to where the rent would be much cheaper in the same neighborhood, especially in an inflationary high interest period. And even if they're equal, in an inflationary period, the rent will keep going up at a very high rate compared to the costs that are naturally in the house, like hydro, heat, and taxes. So that is a big consideration when you want to reduce the true cost of housing that you're paying on an ongoing basis. Okay, Twitter mathematicians, we are okay? Fellow striver, think about this carefully. This is a place that you will be spending the majority of your time. So if you are living in an environment that, let's say, you enjoy very much and you are renting there, but if you had to buy, you would not enjoy, then we're about to have this conversation. So the fifth underestimated but very key advantage of home ownership is forced savings. And forced savings is the antidote to what I just mentioned earlier, where people, as they rent, will go up in lifestyle class and live at a place where if they had to buy, they would not be able to afford. You are already living outside of your means practically if you're living in a place where you're not able to afford the ongoing mortgage. I know I'm glossing over the conversation about the down payment, and down payment aside, if you are unable to sustain a life in a certain neighborhood, and that is the gauge of whether you should own or rent, you are renting outside of your means. Partially, one of the reasons why home ownership will help you with your savings is because if you follow the advice that we usually give of 25% of your income and no more should be part of the house, automatically that 50% that is getting added to the principal of the house is an automatic savings account. It might not be accessible, which is probably good, and you might feel a cash crunch, but you are already saving 12% if your housing payment and interest is 25% of your housing cost. Now, let's look at the other way. If you are paying rent, 100% of that rental cost is gone to whoever is paying that mortgage for them to do their forced savings. Now, 12%, to put it in context, most people go over 25% as a principal and interest payment as part of their house purchase, which means they are saving even more than that 12% that I just offhand calculated. So for example, the government limits you to say 41% of your income to service all your debt. If you use all your debt capacity on the mortgage only and you don't have a credit card or you don't have a line of credit or car or any other servicing, if all that 41% is spent on the principal and interest, you will be north of 15% in savings. And to compare to the national average, only 5% savings rate is the national average. So you'll be 3 times better off with forced savings. Whether that's going to taste good or not, that is secondary, but you will be able to be set up much better. And when we look at these numbers, we see that home ownership is the primary driver, especially in the 99% of the population as far as wealth is concerned. A college degree, a home, those are 2 major determinants of your net worth when it's all said and done. So, forced savings is a key piece of home ownership that gets you to where you need to go. Okay, and to the final one. And as you all know, I save the best for last. Financial resilience. Financial resilience means having the ability to weather a financial storm, an unplanned occurrence that shows up when least expected, that lasts longer than expected. And in this case, I should be able to mention that there's some insurance that you can take to protect yourself from predictable storms, job loss, disability insurance. You can also have life insurance, something of a key man insurance where the bread earner of the household needs to be protected from any and everything that can happen to them just in case, so that the family and the household are safe. All that aside, we all know terrible things just happen. It just was reported on CNBC that 56% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency expense with savings. Now, I don't want to finish on such a bad mood, but this striver is very important. It is very important, first and foremost, to have an emergency fund. An emergency fund is something that covers you 3 to 6 months just in case something that is unexpected happens. But in the case where the unexpected exceeds the expected unexpected, having a home can provide you these benefits that are understated. The first benefit to your financial resilience is that you will be able to go to your banker and ask to skip payments. Most bankers will allow you to skip 1 payment to 3 payments. You can also ask to defer a payment. This is the case where you can skip 1 bi-weekly or 1 monthly to 3 monthly payments. In a case where you are trying to come up with some cash very quickly, there are some lenders, I do not recommend those, but there are some lenders that will lend to you based on the fact that they can put a second, third, fourth, even fifth charge on your house and give you temporary accommodation in dollars. Lastly, if all else fails and you are unable to come up with a mortgage, you have up to 90 days before you are declared to be in default. And I am not guaranteeing that this will get you out of whatever jam you're in, resilience, by giving you time to react. In those 90 days, you need to make sure that you get back in line and you need to start repairing your credit immediately after those 90 days. However, if you were a renter and think these things happen, you do not have those flexibilities that a homeowner might have to buy time to get their affairs back in order. So choose very wisely when you're deciding whether or not to be a homeowner. This is bonus content for Gen Z, millennials, and all of us in our early 30s on the outside looking in. The first thing that we need to do, if you are unable to afford a house right now, and living in Toronto, I know that this is a reality for a lot of us, the first thing you need to do is not miss out on inflation capture, which means you're going to try to find a way to invest in the real estate market through your savings. And speaking of those savings, you can start practicing forced savings and start living way below your means as if you owned a home. That is something you can start doing right now, and then take those savings and use them in the real estate market. There are some different ways you can do it. You can buy indexes for REITs, which are real estate trusts that track the market, or you can buy REITs themselves directly. But you can start participating in the real estate market immediately without having to wait until you can afford your own. You can also move into an area where you can afford. If this is where you see yourself buying and you're living above your means currently, you start moving towards where your dream is. Yes, again, this might not taste as good for your acquired bougie tastes, but that is the road to financial freedom. If you liked any of these and you like the content, like, share, and subscribe, and follow for more information like this. Thank you and have a good one.